So we'll go ahead and get started. Looks like everybody's here that needs to be here at this time. I want to call to order the SDIC May 23rd board meeting, asking for a roll call. Tammy Stephenson.
We see you, Tanny, but we don't hear you.
Annalise, you looks like you're present.
I'm definitely present. I'm
Yes.
what, Tanny, can you hear us? Is that the issue? You can hear us. Okay. We can't hear you.
Now you're muted, Tanny.
Wendy, perhaps he signs out, signs back in.
Let's try one more thing.
Is that any better?
We can hear you now. Thank
There we
you.
go. Okay.
Candy, you are present. Thank you. So, and Tom Hansel is present as well. We have 3 members. We are in quorum. So moving on, thank you staff for all being here today. I know you guys are running ragged with budget and other matters. So we have Amber up with item B, vegetation management contract.
Hello, hi SDIC. How are you today? Been a while. You guys hear me okay? Okay, excellent.
Welcome, Amber.
Hello, hi, thanks, Jim. I logged on at the perfect timing. I'm bringing to you guys today a new on-call contract for natural resources and aquatic vegetation services. This is a contract that we have had, I think, going on about 8 years now. We've come up along too many different extensions, and we needed to put out the RFP so that we can begin work in certain ditches around July 1st. This helps out with operations and conveyance, and it's going to be a 5-year on-call, and we had 2 firms that I feel like will fully meet our services that we need in the current and in the future. I was wondering if you had any questions. It's a pretty straightforward. We expanded a little bit of the scope and included some restoration and site planning services that and more terrestrial vegetation services if we might need it in the future.
Questions for Amber? Amber, did you award just to the one contractor, or did you award to both just for more services?
Good question, Tom. We actually did 2. We were doing up to 2. One of them did not submit services for aquatic vegetation services, so they will not be receiving the full amount. And I'm working with them right now. It will not be the full amount of the contract, though.
Yeah, I mean, Jim, you and your team, good job to augment your programs with consultants. By no means can our team, can we house all these professionals? So a nice work to augment with the consultant. Thanks, Amber.
All right, thank you. Have a wonderful meeting.
Is there a motion or anything do you need any motion to accept this contract?
There is, it's in the box. So motion to approve and authorize the executive director or their designee to negotiate and sign a contract for the on-call natural resources and vegetation management services with a maximum contract value of $125,000 over the course of 5 years.
Tanny, your volume is off again.
I heard Tanny saying he seconded that. It was very quiet.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Steve Winkle has joined the meeting. Stephen Winkle.
Oh, wonderful. Steve,
Good
welcome.
morning. Thank you. Sorry to be late.
We have a motion and second on the environmental contract. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote. Annalise?
Aye.
Tanny,
Yes.
Stephen, were you here for this presentation?
I was, yes.
Okay, and how do you vote?
Aye.
And Tom Hansel votes aye. Motion passes 4-0. Thanks, Amber.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Let's see, our favorite topic, PMLS. Just a small topic, huh? So Colin.
Hi, Colin Rowan, Director of Planning Public Affairs, and I'm just going to give a brief intro and hand it over to Hong, who has the bulk of this. But I do, before getting started, as PMLS is the topic that we're discussing right now, I do want to take a moment. Kendra Winston, who is the Army Corps of Engineers Portland Metro Levee System Study Project Manager, is here with us today. So just as a courtesy, wanted to say hello to Kendra. I think she is listening in, and I think if there's, yeah, Kendra, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, if you're, I don't know if you're able to do that. There you go. Yeah.
Good morning. I'm on my phone, so I'll probably keep my camera off for most of the meeting and just here to primarily listen in. I'm happy to answer questions. I don't have prepared remarks, but looking forward to working with you all on this project as we kick off design here very shortly.
Thanks, Kendra. Yeah, and thanks for letting me put you on the spot there, but good to put a face to a name and to introduce yourself to the SDIC board. So today, Hong is going to walk through basically a three-step process, but the first one in front of you is that Oregon Business Development Department, or Business Oregon grant. As a reminder, that grant is, it's been awarded. The contract has been updated. Want to give a lot of credit to Hong and Armand Rest of Spots for working with Brian Sheets and the Business Oregon team for getting those updates to the contract. So that's in front of you for consideration. And then Hong will walk through the subsequent steps that we need as far as the cost sharing IGA, and then assigning to the JCA the ability to sign for the design agreement. And so the really important step right now is to be able to secure the contract with Business Oregon. As a reminder, that provides 80% of our non-federal share on the design phase, the pre-construction engineering design phase. And so of the total design phase, us as the non-federal sponsors, we're responsible for 35%, and this covers the 80%. I've done the math before, but it means that there's a very small amount that is left, and that's included in your annual budgets and up to annual appropriations. As far as timing, our next step is that we're looking to move forward with having these IGAs and the assignment for signing the contract to the JCA performed in June, so that we're ready in July to sign the design agreement with the Corps. We'd be able to make the request for funding through Business Oregon within the 60 days that the Corps requires, and so that the funding could be in over at the Army Corps in early September. The Corps has received a nominal, well, it's more than nominal, it's about $100,000 to begin working on this phase kind of before the design agreement is signed to negotiate that. We are using our staff time, and most of that staff time is funded through the Levee Ready Columbia Partners to move forward on basically all the negotiations and just sort of getting ourselves ready and coordinated with the Corps as far as beginning the design agreement. With that, I think I'll just hand it over to Hong to talk through some of the details, and then we can answer any questions at the end. So again, yeah, thanks a lot for coordinating with the Army Corps team. Hong, Armand, and Mark have all been great working through all these details.
Thanks, Colin. So just a quick note, Armand has decided to leave the district to find a position closer to his home in Eugene. So we're going to be missing him, as he has been instrumental to get this through. So as Colin mentioned, today we're bringing to the board a resolution to approve the Oregon Business Grant. It's the first step in the PMLS funding, at least at the design agreement. We're requesting all boards to adopt a very similar resolution to execute pretty much the same contract that's issued to all the districts. This is a step forward following a resolution that this board, as well as the other legacy boards, passed back in February 2022, that you'd agree to contribute to the local sponsor share of the PMLS federal project, provided that you receive state grant from the state. So this contract is that state grant. Money is ready to be sent off to the districts upon our execution of this agreement and resolution. As Colin mentioned, Brian was played a critical role in advocating for the districts to have clarifying language that the state agreed to, that really make clear that there is succession or contractual succession to the legacy district's funding rights that will be passed on to the urban district should this phase of the agreement extend into the life of the urban district once we get that going. So today we're asking the board to approve the agreement. Once this funding contract is signed and approved by each individual board, we go into the next set of steps that continue on into making sure that we have the appropriate compliance authorities in place for us to fulfill the local sponsors' obligation under the PMLS design agreement. That includes assigning to the JCA, your joint contracting authority, to act on behalf of the legacy districts in executing the design agreement, because it's the legacy districts that has the operation and maintenance authorities will be assigning that to the joint contracting authority, and also entering into a cost sharing agreement, as well as executing, authorizing the JCA to execute that design agreement. So before I get into those other steps and then the details of that, if I'll open it up for question, at least with respect to the Business Oregon grant, and if there are no questions, we can move into hopefully approving that resolution.
Questions for Hong?
Hey, Tom. Hey, this is Brian.
Go ahead, Brian.
Hey, so I just want to say that I've looked over this, and the additional language that went in there is great language that got put in. Glad that the team was able to work with the state for that. So that was real good stuff. And I don't have any issues with the way that it's put together. And I think that it's a very good proposal, and the money will be well spent. So very good. Thank you.
And acknowledgements to Brian for his support and help and some great ideas that helped improve the product. Thank you, Brian.
Hong, I have no questions. Good work.
Great. So with that, then I'll just turn it over to you, Tom, to run through the call on the resolution.
I put a suggested motion in the chat if anyone would like to see that.
So we're ready to entertain a motion.
Okay, motion to adopt resolution 2023-0501, approving a financing contract with the Oregon Business Development Department for certain levy grant funds applicable to the PED phase of the PMLS project.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll entertain a roll call vote. Steve Winkle?
Aye.
Tanny Stephenson?
Aye.
Annalise Kohler?
Aye.
And Tom Hansel votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you all.
Mr. Chair, just one brief comment, if that's okay. Thank you, Colin, and the government affairs team for all the work to generate the outside revenue. I think it was a key part of our ability to get to this phase. So just want to acknowledge Colin's hard work, and thanks to the Corps for their partnership. So Colin, good job getting that outside funding. I think it was instrumental to getting us to this point.
Nice work, Colin. Hong, back to you on the cost sharing.
All right, well, thank you again, and thank you for your patience to not be looking at my face rather than a PowerPoint presentation. It's just not something we normally do from the legal practice. But in your packet, also at around page 20, 21, starts a memo that then lays out the additional steps that are necessary to secure the authorization for us to move fully into the execution of the design agreement. So now that once Tom signs the Business Oregon grant, money will come in, then we trigger the next set of steps, which as I mentioned earlier, these next steps will come to this board as well as the other legacy district boards for action in June. And we wanted to get it out to the board in May here so that you have advance notice of what is coming your way. So the first step will be a proposed resolution for the legacy districts who has the O&M responsibilities for the levee system to then assign contracting rights to the JCA to act on behalf of the JCA under that design agreement. So ultimately, the design agreement will only be signed by the JCA. The Corps views the system as a one system. The JCA was in fact created with the intent to be able to execute and run these types of joint benefit projects. So it is definitely a prime example of the type of projects the JCA was created to perform. We provided for you the resolution, a draft resolution on that assignment to the JCA, and that the JCA will be accepting that assignment. So that's really for legal purposes. I have to sign off on the legal certification with respect to authorization, and it is my perspective that this assignment step is necessary, as we had done previously for the feasibility study. And one other thing, the real estate work that the Corps helped funded a few years ago. Beyond that, assignment resolution is in fact an intergovernment agreement on the cost sharing among the legacy districts using their own monies to fund the remaining share of the local sponsor contribution. This again is pursuant to the February 2022 resolution that all boards passed that says once we get the grant, we will enter into an IGA, a cost sharing IGA. This agreement is attached in the memorandum for you to review. Brian has a copy of it. And we'll look forward to any edits from him, if any, between now and when we have to come back to this board in June for its execution. The agreement, as consistent with the February 2022 resolution, expects that each district will contribute with their own money at an equal level for the next 3 years. First, second, I think is fully addressed. Third, we don't have third, I'm not quite sure if we have state funding for that. I'll ask Lori, Colin to opine on that. It doesn't address the fourth year, which we hope by then will have merged into the urban district. The last resolution is really, the intergovernment agreement for the cost sharing will also include the JCA as a signing party, since they're the one who's going to be taking in the money from the legacy districts and distributing that to the Corps as invoiced by the Corps. And the last resolution for this board to take up in June is the resolution for the JCA to accept the assignment and execute on the design agreement with the Corps, and that completes the steps for us to formally initiate this formal designing phase with the appropriate funding in place by the local sponsors. There is no action for the board today on these three additional steps, but we will be back to the board in June to ask for your approval So you'll have a few weeks at least to look over it in greater detail, particularly with the cost sharing IGA, and let us know what changes need to be done to get this formally approved by you all. I don't have anything else, so I'll open it up for questions.
Questions for Hong?
Hey, Tom.
Go ahead, Brian.
Hey, Hong. Hey, thanks for putting this together. I just wanted to sort of open it up to the board to see if we wanted, I mean, Hong, is this something that you'd be willing to work through, like any of the details here, or are you looking for any sort of comments that come from the board to go through me, to go to you, or how would you like to best handle this? Because I know that the board probably has their own individual concerns, and I think that it'd be best sort of get those flushed out here in an open meeting so that everybody understands where everybody's coming from. And then we can sort of craft it based on the board's wishes here.
Yeah. So I'll look to Wendy on the timing. I'm fine with you all opening it up for public discussion now. And you're their counsel, Brian. And if you feel like at any time you feel like you need to have an executive session with them, feel free to schedule that with Wendy, at least with respect to, or with understanding the cost sharing IGA may have some issues, but it is. So I'm happy for the board to air out its issues now.
Excellent.
If there are confidential
We have 15 minutes.
information.
We have plenty of time.
Okay, great.
Questions for Hong? I'll get it going, Hong. Under the terms, page 31 of 73, number 1, it ends with the allocated cost between districts may be amended without further board approval or authorization. I'm not a lawyer, but that seems like an open-ended term.
Yeah, I can see why you say that. I'll have to check with Amon on the intent of that. Likely it's it might be the bare minimum cost that reflects the local contributions share with the core, but I'll check with him on that.
Okay, so I was looking at that as well. I think that the concern there is if costs go up, not just a small amount, but probably quite substantially, because I mean, it's possible in those scope of things. So what if in that sort of term there that we sort of limit it to within what is already within
Okay.
Exhibit A, so that just in case there's some significant increases, because I mean, I think we have a very good understanding that we're looking at, I mean, we've got a schedule of funding here, and I think that the question is whether those estimates go up quite a bit versus what's in there now. I think we're all pretty comfortable with what's laid out there. So if there's possibly a way to sort of capture that so that in case there's any sort of large increases that we aren't going beyond those kinds of things.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think in the context of that provision 1, there's a reference to Exhibit A. So I think to your point, Brian, if we can add additional language to clarify that it's limited to the authorized Exhibit A. We don't need to come back to the board, but if it's beyond Exhibit A, we'll need to come back.
I think that's great.
Can do.
Does anybody else have anything? Because I do have a couple things.
I got another one on 3B. You know, basically says districts must set budgets necessary to meet the obligations of the PED, right? And then under 4B, we're getting a little light, and we're saying, well, if we can't get the money together, we're going to write a letter to the Army Corps. And I'm a little nervous about change in our tune with the Corps. And, you know, we can do short-term financing if a district isn't able to meet their financial obligation. I'm just a little nervous about writing to the Army Corps to change our timing on availability of funds. It's just, that's just my comment, but I'd rather go in, we committed to the Army Corps, we will have funds when asked for. So I don't want to change that tune personally.
And just as a note, the funding request letter comes from the Army Corps to us. It's not us. And okay, just wanted to make sure that was.
It's just under 4B, it's if we aren't ready with the money, we're going to write a letter to the Corps asking for more time. And that just seemed, that rubbed me the wrong way. When we already said budgets will be set to meet the obligations of the PED. So we can do short-term financing, could be a budget measure to bridge until grant funds are available. Just an idea.
And I think one key part here is the difference between your approved budget and the request process that we have with Business Oregon Business Development Department. And so when the request letter comes in, we have to send that to Business Oregon and it goes through their process and then they remit the money to us and then we can send it to the Corps. What we are working with Business Oregon on and want to give a lot of kudos to Mark and Kendra, where the Corps is basically putting that letter, funding request letter together ahead of time so that we can send it to Business Oregon so they can have that earlier and make that process begin. So, but really the piece that, you know, and leave it to lawyers to work out the right language on there. But the piece that we were looking to cover down on is the uncertainty in timing and turnaround from Business Oregon. And Business Oregon is really committed to making that move as fast as possible, but it is outside of our control. And so we can do as much as we can to make it move fast, but we do want to make sure that we're, you know, some way insulated on that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Hong. Just under 4B though, Colin, it says, I'm just at odds with, it says districts agree to communicate the reasons for the delay. So I'm just, if we can avoid delaying, find a means to avoid delaying. If it's just my preference, but
that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
And just to piggyback on that, I did have a concern about that as just far as who's going to be talking to the Corps. I mean, if the JCA is going to be the contracting authority, I think that the JCA would be the one reaching back to the Corps for that rather than just the districts themselves, because I'm pretty sure that all 4 funding letters for the different grants will probably be handled in a similar fashion. So if the JCA is going to be responsible, I think, for the contracting, I don't see a reason for the districts to necessarily go back to the Corps for that. So it's for this project. Will the JCA be the single point of contact?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then I think that having the JCA.
Good language change.
Yeah.
Will reflect that change.
Awesome.
the other one, Colin, is the sentence above, districts must make reasonable efforts to secure and deliver the requested funds within the payment window. However, if in the event that the districts are unable to comply with payment, that's just like budgets should have, I'm just trying to avoid, we should have a plan to meet these obligations. So that's just kind of reiterating it. It's just, we should have a plan to meet them without any need for a second plan or delay.
All right, so I hear your concern, Tom, that we should have a plan. If a plan can be put together, are you okay with this language? Or are you recommending that we revise it so that our positioning or our tone with respect to the desire to meet the obligation is stronger?
The latter, Hong, I think.
Okay.
I believe SDIC's in good financial position to meet our financial obligations with the PED. Any district that isn't, they should have, I think they should have a plan B to avoid a delay. And that's just, it's easy for us because I think we have the funds. Laura, you can agree or disagree, but I'm just sensitive to, showing weakness, and I don't think we have to. So nervous about, the Army Corps possibly, getting wind that we're not financially sound. And that's just where I'm erring on that side of caution.
So can we rewrite 4B?
I hear that is a request, and I will work on that.
Other questions for Hong? And this, I don't think is closing this discussion. It's just this is our first shot at it. And Hong, thanks, Colin. Thanks for entertaining these comments.
Okay.
Just
Any other?
one minor thing on the agreement. Nancy Hendrickson's no longer on the JCA board. I want to tune that up.
Okay.
Thanks.
And I just want to acknowledge for Steve and Annalise, if you weren't aware, Tanny is the SDIC representative on the JCA.
Okay, thanks.
So if anything goes south,
We'll need to find, I need to figure out who the chair is.
Thanks for that catch, Tanny, on the membership. Appreciate that.
Okay. All righty. Well, any other questions, comments, concern?
Just to
All right.
reiterate, there's more opportunity if you're reading it or something occurs to you to share those additional questions with us.
so Brian, you had asked a question. If you send a question to Hong or Jim, please include copy Brian in that communication, just so he's aware. It's just, I don't want to leave him in the dark. So, and it's just, thank you.
No, I appreciate that. And just so I can be clear with the direction you want me to go to, do you want me to work with Hong to make sure that we can get something that sort of meets these kinds of things, so that when it's presented back to you, it's sort of in line with what we talked about today?
Agree. I think so I don't expect these questions to go out to all board members unless that's allowed. But if there's any substantive changes, I think we need to come back before the June format meeting, just so everybody has ample time, because that really is the place to have a deep discussion. I think that's really looking for the approval. So
Yeah. So I appreciate that acknowledgement of the timing, Tom. So Brian, with that, I'll request that you go ahead and draft whatever language you feel meets the district board's needs with respect to terms 3B and 3.4, terms 3B and 4B. And I'm happy to entertain that and make sure that it gets run through the other district boards. Our goal is to try to have the same contract for all districts. And so I would likely, these are issues that comes from SDIC will be the driving issues for the other legacy districts, in my opinion. But go ahead, Brian, rewrite it and send it over as soon as you can. That would be greatly appreciated.
Sounds good. I'll do that.
Hong, are we done with item C?
I'm done if you're done. Any other questions? Well, thank you for allowing me to have a few minutes of your time today.
And thank you. Good work.
Thank you.
Lori Baker, financial presentation.
All right. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, I'm gonna
Yes,
pull
we
you all
can.
back. Great, thank you. So today we're going to take a look at the financial statements through March of 2023, which is reflective of the first 9 months of financial activity for the district. So this is a summary of SDIC's financial results through March. This column here shows you the budget for the full year. And this column shows the actual results, both revenue and expenditures for the first 9 months of the fiscal year. Assessment revenues are behind budget by about $19,000, but we will continue to receive payments each month through the end of the fiscal year, so we're on track to meet our budget. Other revenue is behind budget by $398,000 because of the timing of grant revenues for the PMLS local match funds. This is a reimbursement grant, so will be recorded when we receive the funding request from the Corps of Engineers. And we're anticipating at this point that the first 2 years worth of PMLS funding will occur in fiscal year 23-24 because of the timing of all those agreements that we were just talking about. On the expenditure side, system maintenance includes both the maintenance fixed fee from MCDD and costs related to Multnomah County ditch maintenance that will be reimbursed by Multnomah County. The revenue from the county will be recorded as a service contract revenue when the billing to Multnomah County is completed. Projects and planning, which are our non-capital projects, are under budget by $32,000. The most significant line item variances include development review, which is under budget by $7,000. House list coordination is under budget by $15,000. And the Levee technical program is under budget by $7,000. Professional services are under budget by about $114,000, which is mainly due to the positive variance in legal expense of $98,000. The administrative fixed fee reflects 9 months of activity and is online to match budget by year end. And capital outlay is running behind budget, primarily due to the timing of the payment of the local match for the PMLS project, as we talked about in other revenues. So that is the financial statements. Are there any questions?
No questions for me, Lori. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll stop sharing that file. Am I next on the agenda too?
Yes, you are, Lori.
All right, let me get those slides ready to go. Sorry, it takes a little bit of maneuvering here. All right, let me get that going on the screen. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Perfect. So today you have an opportunity to discuss the proposed budget and request any updates to the budget in anticipation of your adoption of the budget on June 20th. We will also be reviewing updates to the proposed budget related to the timing of the PMLS local match funding. So we've made some updates to your proposed budget for that timing. So this slide summarizes the changes that are being implemented in the proposed budget. In other revenues, the grant funding for the local match for the PMLS project has been shifted from the current year to fiscal year 23-24, as the year one local match payment is anticipated to be paid in July of 2023. We've left the year two local match payment in the proposed budget as well, resulting in 2 years of funding occurring in fiscal year 23-24 due to the delays in the year one payment. In capital, the PMLS project local match payments have been updated to shift the 22-23 payment to 23-24. And then I'm going to pull down these slides because Tom actually sent me a question right before the meeting today with regard to the projects and planning piece of the budget. So I'm going to share this screen Can you all see that? So this is a portion of your updated proposed budget book, and this is all of the information on the projects and planning. So those are those non-capital projects that we perform each year. And Tom's question was, wow, that total went up pretty significantly. So our year-end estimate was $80,000 for this year, and our adjusted budget was $72,000. And now we're showing a proposed budget of $228,000. So I'm going to walk you through kind of the large increases, and then I've got Bill and Colin ready to answer any questions about those projects and why those are larger numbers in the upcoming year than what was included in the current year budget. So let me just highlight. So the cleaning and inspection of tow drains is in the budget for $57,000, and we did not have that project in the current year. There is a $12,000 increase in the emergency operating plan. For houseless coordination, we've got almost a $14,000 increase. Down here, the gate tower pipe inspections are a $29,000 increase, and that's non-capital in the 23-24 budget because the ownership of the gate tower was transferred over in previous board meetings. The asset management program is showing as new. That's really a shift of that budget so that we have a project number that's tracking all of that work that was in other areas in the budget for 22-23. So that's not really an increase, it's just a shift. And then the environmental program is showing almost $23,000 increase for the upcoming year. So I'm going to bump back up to cleaning and inspection of tow drains. And Bill, if you want to step in and talk about that one, that would be great.
Excuse me, absolutely. Bill Owen, Chief Engineer. Yeah, so this line item historically would have fallen under the levee maintenance, general maintenance line item under the levee and drainage system maintenance. And so that's why you don't see anything to the left of this table for this topic. So similar to the asset management piece, it's a reflection of our current approach of how to express our budgets. So it's a move from one point to the other. We do need to make sure that the tow drains are operational. These, if you recall, these are the perforated pipes at the toe of the landward side of the levee. So when water rises on the riverward side and water seeps through, it can collect at the toes and come out. We did some work on this. Some of you recall on the tow drains, probably near FedEx, not too long ago. But that's just one phase of the work that we have to do. And so this captures work in other tow drains along the primarily the Columbia River side of the levee system. So hopefully that explains that.
Bill?
Yeah, Tom.
So you're saying roughly a $50,000 reduction in maintenance and ops line, and it was just a shift. That's what you're saying?
I did say that. I think what I was intending to say that this money would have shown up in that line item. It's not necessarily a shift from last year to this year, but in years past, this money would have shown up in that other line item.
And perhaps this is part of the formula around the 1/12 billing. What's the fixed cost for SDIC services by MCDD, and this was the one piece that got carved out as a project specific. So
correct. Yeah, I see Laura shaking her head as well. Right. So there are standard maintenance operations that we do for the levee and the pump station systems for this district, and this falls out of those typical activities. And so we want to make sure to highlight that under projects planned.
Thanks, Bill. I've worked with engineers in the past, and you have to watch them very closely with.
I
money.
know, they're
So,
slippery, right?
Bill, do you want to speak to the emergency operations plan as well?
I can. This is a reflection of our commitment to focus a little more on emergency operations and emergency preparedness. We've done some planning work this year. We'll continue to do some more planning work next year to prepare ourselves properly, but we're starting to do more exercises, field exercises. And as some of you know, the last time we did a major field exercise, I think it was 2018, and the city of Troutdale participated in that exercise. And so we're intending to reach back out to Travis Holton and others at the city to see if they have an interest in participating again. But this is partly a reflection of us having the workload availability to focus on emergency preparedness. And so that's why there's a change. And we'll continue seeing similar levels moving forward.
Bill, if there's capacity, could you reach out to John Hendrickson at the county transportation?
Yeah,
if you see that as beneficial, I'm not steering you there, but if you see that as beneficial, some of the maintenance folks or their engineering folks could participate if you think that would be beneficial.
I think it would be beneficial because we've not engaged with John's group as much. We've engaged with certainly the emergency management division within the county quite a bit, but John's group would be particularly helpful for dealing with traffic control and other things that we definitely will need to handle, particularly along Marine Drive. So good suggestion.
All right, I'm going to jump forward to houseless coordination. Colin, do you want to take that one?
Sure, I can take that one on. So there is an increased need for outreach in advance of our operations staff doing their operations work in SDIC. So there's more coordination. We contract with Cascadia Health. They reach out to people, and it's mostly over on the west side of Marine Drive, but there's some places we're going to be doing some increased outreach so that our operations staff can be able to do their work. But yeah, so that increase is for engagement with the houseless communities and other jurisdictions and service providers, which is costs that are going up across all 4 districts, and more work is being done in SDIC.
I'll just add on to Colin's description that as the board knows, the ODOT will be completing the next phase of the 40-mile loop project that includes portions of the SDIC levee. And so there will be more areas accessible to a variety of community members. And so we're anticipating some additional expenses in that area when we have not had to spend as much in the past. So you can see that in the window here. So we, even with not a lot of interaction, relatively speaking, from Penn 2 or MCDD, y'all are still spending $16,000 a year. And so this is just being proactive and just saying that there'll be some more work out there.
All right, the gate tower pipe inspections. Oh, Tanny, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to get kind of clear on the houseless coordination. So we're going up, basically our cost is doubling, and this is primarily due to the trail?
So yeah, that's the biggest change, Tanny, from last year to this year. And you know, it's just our best guess based on what we've seen in other parts of the Portland metro area about trail access. I hope we don't have to use this. I hope we're closer to 16,000, but based on past experience, there's a possibility that we'll have to spend more.
Okay, and so on the trail, right, we've got all the IGAs and everything. at the end of the day, who's actually responsible for any damage to the system and debris that's left and that type of thing? Is it the city of Troutdale?
It would be the landowner. So whoever's
Oh.
land is where the levee is located, that's who we reach out first. The port is one. The city is another. But FedEx and some others are also in that vicinity. So we look at the landowner first.
And Bill, maybe it would be helpful to talk through how we engage with Cascadia and what they do in advance of our maintenance operations.
Sure. So our protocol is to use our on-call behavioral services contractor to approach the camper or campers in that area, have them explain what the situation is, why that area is important, and ask them to move on and to and provide information for services in the region for them to use. If that doesn't work, then you folks have passed a resolution a couple of years ago now that allows us to leverage our obstruction clause in our ORS statutes to work with the property owner to have those individuals moved on and the areas cleaned up. So there is the possibility that we could be reimbursed for some of this work if it gets to that point. That money, of course, wouldn't show up in the expense side of the budget that you're seeing here, it'd be up in revenue. But yeah, so that would be our second step. But we really do try, after the outreach, we really do try to work with the landowner, see if they have options first.
Right. So you're kind of thinking that there's going to be a significant amount of riffraff that's going to shift from out to SDIC, right?
I think we just want to be ready in case we see an increase in camping activity.
Yeah.
Because we want to prevent
appreciate
anything from
it.
getting bad.
It looks like we're dropping MCDDs, houseless, by about 24K, right? And so I'm just wondering if we're thinking that there's going to be like some riffy raff that's going to go further east once that trail opens up, which it kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's a possibility, right? So we've had less expense in MCDD towards the end of this current year because the city of Portland and others have tightened up on their enforcement. And so that's just required us to spend less. So yes, there's a possibility that there could be some movement.
Okay.
Oh, did you have a comment?
Just to clarify that with the obstruction, it is by law that we go after the landowner, but sometime, at least with respect to my understanding of how the 40-mile trail has worked, there's multiple layers of responsibilities, and whoever owns the easement rights or the right of way to allow for that open use will likely also be the responsible party, and because the owners will have given away its some portion of its right to be able to allow for the area to be opened up. So it is a complicated matter, but certainly we would be looking to the landowner, but that may not be the most fruitful in terms of the extent of their authorities to restrict access.
Well, and part of it, some of the landowners are like, we're really not in favor of this. And so it's coming through like a freight train, and who's going to take care of it? And I have kind of put a warning shot across the bow to Troutdale that there was probably going to be a cost that was going to end up on their doorstep for anything additional that SDIC gets hit with.
Yeah, those should all be negotiated in the IGA in terms of who is responsible for that. I know that the version that I was involved in, the authorities and the responsibility of SDIC is limited to the physical infrastructure and impairment to that, but the above the ground and who accesses was not something that was in the district's purview to manage. And so that will have to be on the port, on the 40-mile trail group, the cities to be responsible for the above the ground
So it'd be great if we
access
could
issues.
just take this whole thing and just kind of slide it over to those that are actually responsible, is what you're saying. Yeah.
And I think we're working really hard to do that, beginning with access control now and reminding everyone. Bill and I just had a conversation about an MCDD spot where there's a new pickup truck, and our first call is to the underlying landowner to let them know it's there. So I would also note that we were underspent on the house list budget in the current fiscal year, and we hope to be underspent next year as well.
Okay, moving on. Who wants to take the gate tower pipe inspection?
I think that's a
Colin?
Bill
I can-
question.
Yeah, I can start and Colin can fill in. This really is a maintenance exercise, and again, it's separate from our fixed fee related to maintenance, and so we wanted to highlight this. As you know, as the board knows, MCD has taken ownership of the gate tower and the pipes. But in order to clean out the pipes, you have to actually access them. And currently, both sides of the pipes have too much sedimentation to properly access those areas. So there's permitting as well as actual physical work on the ground or in the water, in this case, actually dredge out the areas around the pipes. And so SDIC's share of that is reflected here. MCD's is substantially bigger, as you can imagine, not just for clearing out the sediment in the channel over there, but actually doing the work. So anyway, so this is so this is primarily dredging and permitting related to it.
Thank you. And last but not least, the environmental program, Colin.
Sure. So environmental program, I think the bottom line is that we just have a convergence of regulatory renewals that haven't happened in the last 5 to 20 years for some of them. And so no way to really avoid it, but I can quickly walk through what that looks like. The biggest one is a DSL, the Department of State Lands programmatic permit renewal. So that is required for all work that we do below the ordinary high water line. And it's good for 5 years and helps us expedite and reduce costs as far as individual projects, which would otherwise have to go through individual permitting. So it's a really important tool for all of our planning work. It happens every 5 years and it just so happens to land this year. There is also a requirement on there, which is for a stream conditions assessment. The last time that was required was 20 years ago. And so you'll have another one in 20 years, but right now you do need to do the stream condition assessment. And so we're getting that up to date since it is so out of date currently. There's a few other pieces that are all wrapped into that program. There's also an RFP for environmental services. And so that's going to be staff time for soliciting and doing that contract. That is a renewal of an existing contract. And that covers all the sediment sampling and coordination with the Department of Environmental Quality at the state that's required. So again, regulatory. And then the last piece is something that's required for our protocols for managing sediment removal, which is the review and revision of our environmental and management testing plan. So that is in coordination with a consultant, and that's something that we just have to do to meet all these regulatory needs. So there is a substantial increase in March of 2023. Carrie Sandeman, the environmental program manager, presented some of the existing environmental program and highlighted what some of these upcoming changes were, and happy to answer any questions.
I just want to thank everybody for walking through that. I missed the last meeting. I wasn't sure if that was covered at that meeting, but That was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. And I can take any other questions on the budget at this point. At this point, unless I hear otherwise, I'll be proceeding to our June meeting with the budget as it stands currently. If there are any changes that the board wants to make to that budget prior to that meeting, just send those requests over and I can make updates.
Lori, I want to, I don't know if I need to apologize, but thanks for working with Tanny and developing this budget as well. I know he and you have some conversations and building that budget. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Mr. Owen, are we ready for system vulnerabilities?
Yes, sir, we are. Let me share my screen so we can walk through this. I believe you received a copy of a short description of the presentation and then a version of the slides as well. Share screen. Now, let me know when you guys can see this.
It's there.
Okay, thank you. So I have put together a series of bullets to explain what engineering staff feel are the key system vulnerabilities in this special district. And I'll be co-presenting this with Kevin Severson, our supervising engineer, who should be joining us momentarily. So I'm going to start off with the drainage system and focus on, I have 5 slides dealing with the drainage system, and then the final 5 slides deal with the levees. So the first part of the drainage system, of course, is the Sandy pump station, which is the key piece for the special district. As you've heard in past presentations, there's a series of issues. I've identified what the risk levels are and what the solution is. As you know, the pump station itself is too low in elevation and subject for flooding. As happened in '96 is what this photo shows. I note that it's a low risk of flooding because the 100-year event doesn't come around very often. It does come around more often than every 100 years, as many parts of the country have experienced, and we're going to be. I expect something similar to happen in our area again. Flow capacity from your drainage master plan that you partnered with the city of Troutdale to complete. It's only, this pump station can only keep up with a 5-year storm event under future conditions. It's prior to TRIP, the pump station was big enough, but now coupled with the TRIP flow control structure, the TRIP weir, and the additional impervious area in the area, sorry, in the region, the pump station just doesn't have enough capacity to handle a full build out that we're expecting about 20, and what we're anticipating at least in 2035. So that actually, to me, is a more moderate risk of flooding rather than just the building elevation itself. I've also talked about redundancy issues. For instance, backup power supply is not available here. We just installed a transfer switch in the MCV pump station 1, but that doesn't exist here. And that's something that we definitely need to have happen. Or we need to have, as some cities have done, have an additional generator installed on site that can provide power for up to 12 or 24 hours in case there's an outage. That is a moderate risk to the area, particularly if there's flooding upstream and the PGE substations at risk. The solution, as you've heard Colin and others say, is the part of the Portland Metro Levee System suite of projects. This is one of 3 projects areas, 3 pump stations that are going to be replaced or rehab.
Bill, question on the.
Sure.
So even if we had a generator and kept it running, if the power went out, we still don't have the capacity to keep up with the flows?
That is correct.
Okay.
Potentially, if it, so, right, I mean, if the storm event's big enough, then potentially we can't keep up with flows. So what does that mean? Well, that means that you would have to start relying on your flood storage that exists in the system. So that's the channel itself, right? And up to the top of bank. It also has the trip wetland area is huge for flood storage for us, as well as the Blue Lake area, which is less so. But yeah, there are 3 areas for flood storage. But once those are tapped out, yeah, the pump station can't keep up. So
does SDIC or MCD to have a standard operating plan for optimization of the trip storage? I mean, is there like a recipe that this happens, you do the following 3 things?
Yeah.
Out there having discussions, trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. And if you can wait a couple slides, I'll talk to you about that. Great. The drainage system itself, I actually touched on this just a moment ago. There's sedimentation issues in Salmon Creek in particular. But this slide focuses primarily on sedimentation near the culverts, right at the entrance of the culverts. The culverts, similar to what we're seeing with the 2 drains under the gate tower, sedimentation is built up so water can't flow out easily, and so you have to dredge that periodically. In some cases, that's a moderate risk. I mean, particularly at this site that you see here on the slide, this is the 2 culverts that go under Marine Drive that then lead to the Sandy Pump Station. There's substantial sediments, not just next to these culverts. And so we need to spend some time to make sure that the culvert openings are clear enough so the water can actually flow between point A and B. So that does require some targeted or selective dredging. We also have issues with bank erosion along the conveyance system. A good example of that is just downstream of another culvert under Marine Drive, pretty, I think it's close to the port property, not too far from I-84. There's a substantial bank erosion as the water comes out of the culvert and then kind of makes a left-hand turn. And so the solution there is, I noted here, nature-based solutions. We don't need big riprap or rock there. The engineering community has for years used geofabrics and other measures that can be vegetated to stabilize that bank. Those happen periodically. It's a relatively low risk for conveyance. The water still moves, but it does affect property, of course. And so we want to make sure to jump on that when we can. Other types of issues along conveyance, sedimentation in the channel itself, that the previous slide with the photo shows the area just south of the double barrels under Marine Drive. And it's also the area right where water goes underneath the cross levee to Blue Lake area. That area has been, it's kind of almost choked with sediment at this point. And I've talked about a need to have a pretty sizable dredging project. It would cost hundreds of thousands over a couple of years. And I put that on the CIP in years past, and we realized it belongs more on the M&S side of the budget. But regardless, this is something that it needs to be addressed. And again, not a huge risk for flood storage, but we do need to pay attention to it a little more than we have. The other issue with conveyance are beavers. They create backwater situations. This is actually the channel right next to the Troutdale Airport, because the best one I can find that shows a beaver dam and how it's been breached. So we spent a fair amount of money to remove beaver dams throughout the year. We've also started a process to relocate those, trap and relocate those beavers. I believe that program's on hold because of funding from others, project partners this year. But the idea is to trap those beavers and move them to up to Mount Hood area eventually. And finally, we've found some measures like beaver deceivers that have been effective that allows the beaver to dam some parts of it, but still allows conveyance to move forward. Here's the system operations slide that Tom referenced earlier. The issues here, sometimes we have reactive operations, reactive measures and operations. We base it upon field observations, but honestly, for the most part, that works, right? So the question is, I don't want to put you all in a situation for a solution looking for a problem. So in this case, generally, this is working for us, and we're monitoring weather forecasts and we've just implemented a new phase of our work, so more administrative staff can supplement operations staff when needed. And I'm aware, I've done some work in my past career on flood forecasting tools, like how if rain comes, you can model how quickly and how much water can get downstream. And when that happens, you can adjust your SCADA system, which I did with the city of Portland, to have different components of the system talk to each other. So for instance, the trip weir is one example, and we've actually plumbed SCADA conduit there just in case we need to connect the trip weir to our SCADA system in the future. That would allow us excuse me, to operate that system, that particular structure automatically rather than manually, which is what we do now. So that's a point of control. Pump stations, the pump station, of course, is a point of control. The last piece would be the single culvert under Marine Drive, closer to the PGE substation. That is a place where we can potentially add some automation if we need it. At this point, I'm a little reluctant to spend money on things that I don't think provide as much value, and I need a little more experience with larger storms to convince myself that we need to go down that direction. But it is on my mind, and I know tools exist out there that help us when the time comes. As I said here, there's no flood forecasting tools up here. The system is not really structured well for a flood forecasting methodology. There are software and models out there that exist that we could leverage when and if that happens. The great thing though is that we've been able to use or update the internal drainage master plan. Internal drainage response plan, and we've started to create action levels similar to what we've created for the Columbia River. When stages of the Columbia River get high enough, if it's at some elevation, then we can move on to another action. So we're going to do something similar, an SDIC using the SCADA system. Okay, I think at this point I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, let him introduce himself and take you through the rest of the slides.
Hello, I'm Kevin Severson. I manage the engineering team at MCDD. I'm also a geotechnical engineer. And we are going to talk about the deficiencies, at least, or the risks that vulnerabilities in SDIC, particularly related to levee embankments. Right now, we're looking at at the bottom, that's a heat mapped topography of the northwest corner of SDIC, where the Georgia Pacific entrance is, right next to the Sandy Pump Station. And you can kind of see that discoloration, that dip in the levee, if you will, right there where the Georgia Pacific entrance is. That's about 3 feet low. That's identified in the PMLS, and they are planning on addressing that when they address the pump station and also the embankment project in that location. So it's known that it got graded down probably during the development of those commercial industries there, and we just need to get that set back right. Should be a pretty easy fix. This is part of the PMLS analysis. This is another one that blue trapezoid, the cyan color there, is a berm that's going to be added to add landward stability to the embankment slope. This is part of an analysis for the PMLS. What they did in the PMLS is they actually raised the water level all the way to the levee crest as their methods of failure. And so they were analyzing the levees for performance beyond even the original design from the design memorandum. So this wasn't picked up in our certification studies because it's a different set of water levels that we were applying to it. But they like to achieve a factor of safety of 1.5. You can see that 1.57 with that added berm. There's a lot of clay in the material and the soils. We could learn that from our sampling program performed back in 2017. And this is just there to bring up that factor of safety from a pretty broad global failure under very high flood conditions loading against the embankment.
Kevin, question? Yeah. Just more curious. So in this scenario, the modeling has the water at the peak height of the levee, right?
Yeah.
So if we're at peak height of levee at SDIC and they did a model, what is the water level down in MCDD and Penn 1 and Penn 2?
You're correct. We are talking about completely inundation at Penn 1, Penn 2, probably most of MCDD, at that point. So agreed, it's a pretty grim situation at that point for us if the water gets that high.
Yeah, to me, it's just relevance. I mean, yeah, it's a model, but we're fixing this little berm back here, and it's just the irony is it's not good downstream. So
right. Yeah, no, at that point we've retreated to high ground and we're saving the last things we can.
Thank you.
And Kevin, just to that point, I mean, that modeling is obviously top of berm, but as far as the fragility concerns, maybe a discussion a little bit on risk drivers as far as failure prior to overtopping. I don't know if you want to dig into that or not, but not purely top of bank or, top of levee safety concerns that were placed into those models.
Right. Yeah, they looked at these different water levels and they also looked at overtopping, and they were, when they were analyzing the levees and the different design alternative, that were going to sort of be their motivators for how they selected projects. They were looking at, do they want it to be driven by bringing everything up to the same level of flood protection, which, of course, if you were trying to match in Penn 1, Penn 2, MCDD all the way up to the same height as the SDIC levees, you're talking about an insanely expensive project. So they kind of looked more for robust performance of the embankment that was there, and they prioritized having the levees be effectively reliable up to the point of being overtopped. So it's sort of an emergency response advantage of just being like, we have confidence at least that as long as the water is not to the top of the levees, that our levees will perform. This is another thing that was not identified in the PMLS or the certification studies because the levee embankment and the performance is adequate. The issue here is actually that just the slope is very steep. You can see that crescent that's effectively formed between that lower access road and the upper crest 40-mile loop trail. And I believe, but I don't know, but I think they kind of snugged up the toe of that slope when they were putting that stuff in. And it's pretty steep between the levee crest on the riverward side and that lower access road. And we get some pretty deep rutting when the mowers try to go across that because of that steep angle. And it was identified kind of right where that mouse cursor just crossed in the RIP inspections. And we've seen it in conversations with our ops folks, have identified that that's just sort of a hairy area to get in there with the mowers. So we're trying to come up with a non-CIP project to improve that. But pretty easy sliver fill on that embankment should be a solution. Either we raise the access road up or we move it out. This is just a less than ideal encroachment situation, with the Corps and even, the levee districts didn't used to monitor developments as closely as we do now. There's a lot of things that you see here that we just wouldn't allow people to do, particularly like storage buildings and things like that directly against the toe of the levee. We're kind of managing this through attrition. You can probably see that large gray empty parking area where the fence is scooted back about 15 feet away from the toe of the levee, and then the one immediately to the south of it where that is not the case. Yeah, right in there. That was something we managed through our development review process, and we may just have to manage this over time through attrition. And as people reacquire these properties and want to develop, make them adjust their properties to fit what the Corps' requirements would be, because normally we'd like to have access to the landward, riverward toe and have a little bit of a buffer. But I will say the embankment here is very tall, it's built well. We do have good access to the levee crest, so it's just really something that we're watching and trying to get these encroachments backed up a little bit. This is probably one of the largest low spots in the system. In the past, the Corps didn't really look south of I-84. And when they did start looking, they identified that this embankment, in this area is about 6 feet low. There used to be a straight shot of embankment basically from that segment that we were just looking at where all that development was, all the way south across I-84 that kind of tied in. That used to just be one vertical connection when it was originally built. Then they built I-84 and they created tie-ins that, where you can see the one up above and then you can see the one down on the south has been graded down. There's a bike path down in that area and some other, and they, ODOT just built a water quality treatment swale and some things like that in that area. But it's about 6 feet low. It's a little over that at the absolute lowest point. ODOT has, been willing to, share access to their right of way. And, we just need to come up with a proposed plan. The PMLS is planning to address this as well. So we're going to basically just go with what the PMLS chooses for a solution on this. And then, if we need to, we may have to add, there may be a small emergency closure that goes in over the bike path or something to that effect, so they can maintain pedestrian access. And admittedly, this is a very high level of flooding again that creates this, but this is the first point of inundation in SDIC as the water level rises and backs up in the Sandy. This is where water comes in first and then goes under those bridges for I-84 there called the Graham Road bridges and then enters the system there. So that is our lowest spot in the system right there, and we need to address that. But again, we are talking about total inundation of Pen 1 and Pen 2 at that point. And, so it's still a pretty high level.
Kevin, Bill, thank you so much. Questions?
Yeah, Tammy.
I had a couple on the I-84 ramp.
Mhm.
Is ODOT picking up the amount that PMLS isn't picking up?
I haven't heard anything to that effect. ODOT, I don't believe that they've formally accepted responsibility for lowering that area. They did do a back analysis on that project when they redid those bridges in that area and got their development approved after the fact and submitted the seepage and stability models with the Corps of Engineers for their 408 program. But no, we don't have anything from them saying we're definitely the ones that graded that down. And we don't have any evidence to that effect either. So no, they're not agreeing to pay for that for us.
So who would be responsible for that?
Likely the local sponsor and partners. I don't know how
So
else
it'd be
we could.
Troutdale.
Right. I mean, I think SDIC in general, but I think we're paying for it collaboratively. Colin is probably more equipped to speak to that, how we're funding that.
Yeah, so that would be the similar cost share as the other levee improvements in SDIC through PMLS. So it would be 35% non-federal sponsor cost share, and by the time of that construction, the goal would be that would be funded through the general obligation bond and funded through Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District.
Right, but well, I know that. I'm just saying, like, even the 35% and all of that should be paid by whoever's responsible, right? Which would be SDIC.
Well, and so right, so in this case, it would be the non-federal sponsor of that local levee system for that component if there wasn't a damage that, as far as doing the sort of forensic analysis on it, ODOT doesn't believe that they caused harm to the levee there. We don't have those records, and therefore it is sort of the non-federal sponsor, SDIC right now, and then it would be the single district Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District that would be paying for that part. That's different than the area between Pen 1 and Pen 2 with the off-ramps Marine Drive, where ODOT has recognized that when they did the Marine Drive off-ramps in the mid-90s, that they actually notched the levee there. So it's not that ODOT, it's just ODOT doesn't believe that they caused harm to the levee in that location.
But if you dig out, I don't want to go along with this, but if you dig out a levee and put in a swale, that's really kind of the opposite effect. One's trying to repel water and the other one's trying to collect water. So you're really kind of going the whole distance if you're ODOT.
Yeah,
Right.
technically that swale would have been somewhat inside the original tie-in of the levee alignment, but they did perform the seepage and stability analyses to show that what they would have affected, to the satisfaction of the Corps and us. So I don't think that they really weaken that area. The real issue is that we should have some, embankment to the exterior, if you will, or riverward of that swale that's protecting that area. We're just low.
I want to give credit to Kevin. Kevin actually put together that conversation between ODOT and the levee safety officer over at the Portland District to have that conversation and analysis done. And then additionally, talking through as far as any need around emergency closures and things like that. We've also coordinated between ODOT, the Army Corps, and ourselves. Tanny, I hear your point and it's well taken. And I think ODOT recognizes they need to do that analysis, but also the Corps has accepted that there isn't an increased flood risk based on that swale.
There isn't one, but yet everybody wants it fixed. Right?
We want to,
It's just adjacent, yeah.
right? It's to the interior of where the embankment ought to be.
So it should probably be Troutdale that's paying for it because they approved the development.
Yeah, there's a bike path in there too. I'm not, there's a lot of things we can point out with the infrastructure now and say, well, who built this? You must be responsible. I'm not, I don't know that. We don't have the records for that, but I know things get decided between government agencies and agreed upon. So.
Yeah. So
So-
we should probably look into that. And then the other question I had was, I noticed some of that encroachment. Do we have easements for all these properties and things?
Yes.
I was looking like one in particular that I often drive by and see is the mock property, where those Conex boxes are like shoved up against the levee.
Mhm.
So we have recourse to where we can get those items moved away.
Yes, we have maintenance and easements and everything through that whole corridor that date back to the original construction of the levees.
Okay, so we can just say, move your stuff back.
Yeah, and we haven't had anybody aggressively not support us, I mean, but there is a question of if we needed to get there quickly, how quickly could we get there, which is, the Corps, when they do their review standards and they kind of have these different zones and they want a certain buffer, they typically look for a minimum of 15 feet away from those tows, just knowing that even if you have a friendly development in that area, if you really need to get there in an emergency, are they going to be able to get their stuff out of your way in time, and can you rely on that?
Yeah, and I think you'd probably better rely on just having it the way you want it.
Yeah, we're trying to
Yeah.
move it that direction.
Thank you.
I think that's what we have to present. So unless there's other questions, we can sit in the back to the chair.
Bill, Kevin, again, thanks for coming back. I recall this topic earlier months ago, and I appreciate you coming back with more details specific to this district. It was very helpful.
Good.
And it really gives us a priority list, right? Of as we move forward, don't lose sight of these objectives you and your team have laid out. Angel and Jim, I know you have reports in the board packets. Thank you both for your work in communicating other issues and other matters going on in the district. I do appreciate receiving that additional information, and doesn't have to necessarily have a discussion, but it's good information for the board members to be aware of. I'm ready to adjourn unless there's any other matters that we want to cover at this time. Steve, Tanny, Brian, anything we need to cover before we adjourn?
No, just appreciate the presentations and all the information. Thank you.
And I have my marching orders, so thank you for the discussion.
Me as well. Thank you.
So the SDIC May 23rd meeting is adjourned. Have a wonderful lunch, everybody.
Thank you, board members. Bye.